At this time, we will call school district number 1 to order. Let's start with pledging allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, it's a fire page. Just behind a little bit. All right. We will start with the recognition of our visitors.
Bob Schott, Rick Chrisman, Susie Bleakin, Tammy Beck, Trisha Witt, Tony Chu, Jesse Fisher, Tammy Heaney, Trish Schreiber, Shelley Burton, Tom Cotton, Brad Dahl, Mary Minor, Chris Frankum, and Katie Crowther.
Is there any public comment? Public comment? We have no correspondence. We'll start with the high school student council report.
All my student council kiddos are either sick or went to open gym, so I'm standing in for the students today. During homecoming week, the seniors painted the T. They did a school-wide scavenger hunt at the high school and also had a school-wide barbecue. They helped with dress-up days all the way for K through 12. They had a luncheon where the high school athletes went down and had lunch during all 3 lunch periods with the grade school kids. And then they also had a t-shirt signing day, which was that Monday of homecoming week. And they raised $500 for the Ethan Boser Memorial Scholarship. And then they decided that they wanted to pick like a different donation every year to donate to somebody else. So we'll go to somebody else next year. Currently they helped FCC with the trick or treat so kids can eat fundraiser. I think it was like over 1,000 pesos. It was 1,325. It was a lot. And they're also currently helping NHS sell raffle tickets for a fundraiser, and they're like selling, they're $1 for a turkey dinner. So it has the turkey, the stuffing, the mashed potatoes. So if they come ask you for raffle. And then they also volunteered today to go have lunch with the veterans during, it would have been their period, but it would have been lunchtime. And then in the future, they're looking at dress up days for that week, that last week in December, K through 12. And then they, since we did not get a bonfire during homecoming week, they want to make winter bonfire, so that's something. Any questions?
Thank you.
Athletic directors report.
So, we just got through, last weekend with, you're good. Fall sports, winter sports parent meeting was last night at the high school. We had great participation. We had 23 boys basketball kids sign up, 18 girls basketball. So we'll have 2 teams now for girls basketball. I'll have a JV team and varsity team. Wrestling, we had 6 girls and 17 boys, and cheer, we had 19 girls. So when I added that up, it was about over 80-something kids, and so that's about half of all student bodies in athletics. So that's a good thing. And we're really proud, and that doesn't include school clubs and things like that. They're all, student council and things like that as well. So, winter sports season starts practice on November 20th, and then in the first week of December we'll start playing our first games. And so both for girls basketball, boys basketball, and wrestling. We'll have probably 3 teams for boys basketball, 2 teams for girls basketball, like I said. The winter schedule is almost complete. We're just waiting now to hear from the other schools on what are the other schools gonna have. We're seeing a really decline in girls basketball. There's a lot of teams that may only have 1 team or possibly 2 teams for girls basketball, but most of the boys programs have teams. So we're just waiting for their parent meetings to take place, and then we'll have that figured out. Last thing is me and Mrs. Burton had a committee, an interview committee, and we interviewed 2 people for the middle school girls basketball, Yanni Crow, and the middle school wrestling, Brianna Bernhard, and I think they'll be talked about later on in the bulletin. to, but me and Mrs. Burton think that we recommend the hire as well as us folks, coaches as well. So anyway, any questions for me?
Maintenance supervisor. It's been a busy week. I don't know if you can all fill it in here. We got Pete coming to this side and the classroom side down here in the CPC. Still working on addressing over the gym at this current moment. Bus barn. 4 of the 5 feeders are working right now, so we're not gonna freeze that out again. We got boilers 1 and 2 firing down here pretty regularly. Been kind of chaos this week. I just got done with Shelley Burton's freezer again. It decided it wanted. Bogus, sorry. Bogus. But it's going again, so we won't have to look at maintenance on that. Still maintaining the boilers at the high school. They're all fixed and running again. We got classrooms pretty evenly heated. As far as you can, the control systems on there are kind of outdated and they don't want to work the way they're supposed to anymore. Do you have anything, Aaron?
Can you explain a little bit about the air handler that's supposed to service just the gymnasium alone and the problem going on that, what we're working on trying to resolve that?
So inside the air handlers, there's a coil and think of it like a weight, right? And in that's what the hot water from the boiler passes through, and then forced air passes over that. And that's where you get your warm air from. That's what we're getting right here because we have 2 small serviceable boilers downstairs. Right now upstairs in that side, there's a pretty significant crack in that coil. I have talked to Brandon Puccinelli. Core did want to handle that, but we decided to go local and probably more feasible money wise. We either need to look at getting a replacement for it or raising it back together. Because right now, when I first started it up yesterday, we had a small tiny leak. And then I was down here for about 45 minutes, went back upstairs to check on that small tiny leak. And we had a really big leak, so shut that down at the current moment. It's gonna take digging into it and special ordering a part for it. More likely what's gonna happen.
Plus good news. I mean, that's years to report, it's good. It's on.
Small steps, right? And just making more progress throughout all the school buildings.
So without that being operational, what areas are affected by not having
That would be just the gym.
just the CPC gym?
Yeah. The pool side I've got shut down. I had it running as well, but there's no reason to heat that side at the current moment because there's no water going in there. There's nothing that's gonna freeze up if it does drop below cold and it's sealed off. We're not gonna get cold drafts in the building. But they can run.
They don't have to be the same handler you work for.
We had Core looking at it and no, it's not. They're sisters. If you look at them, they're both set up the same, just a mirrored image of each other. Brandon Puccinelli is actually the one that replaced it for the pool side. 4 years ago. 4 years ago, he replaced that and it took him special order in that part. But he said it's not a match too. So I mean, we got 2 companies that are saying, no, it's not a match. It's not something we can just take the one, put it together. That's what I got.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have no communication supervisor. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from October 14th?
I'll move to approve October 13th.
Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from October 14th. Is there any additions, corrections? Discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign, motion carries. Next is the second reading of policy 13. And there is We didn't make any changes last time, but if you go. The change that needed to be made. Is on. The middle of the paragraph. The final vote for adoption shall take place not earlier than at the second reading of that particular policy.
So I think you just keep going down, Scott. The last sentence. The new revised policies that are required. Or have required language, state or federal law. May be adopted that.
So if it's a required change, you can adopt it the first. Anything else,
Anything else?
anything that you just choose to change, still requires two.
Yeah.
Unless you change that second to first.
What if you feel like they follow?
That's why you have to change this, and that was what Via was saying on this.
Greg could change the second to the first. So we had 2 readings. And we could get this one.
Yep, so we'll have to bring it back. Because it wasn't, we did changes the last time.
Pass it. The next reading.
Yeah.
I move that we pass policy 1310. With corrections from going from second reading, to first reading, back to us at the next one. Third reading.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Discussion, seeing none, we'll all proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Vote carried. New business, out of district attendance agreement.
The sixth grader from Palmville. The student has been going to school here for, this is the third year, I believe. The form is still under that. Oh, okay. Their parents taking care of him.
That would be an elementary. You can't. Kevin counts. Our motion,
I move to accept that, out of district attendance agreement.
then move to second to approve the out of district attendance agreement. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign, motion carries. Next is coaching contracts. Junior high girls basketball.
Danny Walker.
Danny Crowe.
Danny Crow, excuse me, I know from Danny Walker, sorry, yeah, Danny Crow, I'll still call her, I still have her Danny Walker in my phone too, so, just so you know that, yeah, Danny Crow.
Okay, there a motion?
I moved to hire Danny Crowe as for middle school girls basketball.
Then moved and seconded to hire Danny Crowe as middle school girls basketball coach. Is there discussion? Discussion, seeing none, will proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign, motion carries. Next is junior high wrestling.
Brianna Bernhardt.
There a motion?
I move to hire Brianna for.
Been moved and seconded to hire Brianna Bernhardt as middle school wrestling coach. Is there any discussion? Discussion, seeing none, will proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Same sign, motion carries. Next is junior high track.
Kurt Walker, Jody Walker, and Jamie Eads.
Is there a problem with hiring them as a block? No objection? Is there a motion?
I moved to hire Kirk Walker, Jody Walker, and Julie as the middle school.
Been moved and seconded to hire Kirk Walker, Jody Walker, and Jamie Eads as the junior high and middle school track coaches. Is there any discussion? Discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign, motion carries. Next would be high school softball.
Brooke Maher and Madison Johnson.
There-
Pearson, thank you. Madison Johnson. Is it?
Is there any objection to hiring them together? Is there a motion?
Move to hire Rick Lawhart, Master Johnson as high school softball coaches.
Been moved and seconded to hire Brooke Maher and Madison Johnson as the high school softball coaches. Is there any discussion?
I have a question for Bob. Bob, for high school, for the high school coaches, who did you have in attendance at the hiring meetings?
With Brooke?
No, I'm just talking in general. Did you have any?
Those were a couple of years ago. I don't remember who was on the interview committee with him.
Okay.
Where Duncan was there, he was always, we always have, I don't know who's the board member.
Did you have any of the high school coaches need to be re-interviewed this year? So they're all rehires?
Yep.
From last year?
Yeah, we hired the two, just Danny and Brianna were the two that we needed to, that were replacements.
Right, and got back in.
We're still discussing softball.
And that was actually John. School.
Brooke was the head coach, I should say, and yeah.
Yeah. that's-
Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed, same sign, motion carries. Next is high school track.
Nolan Boyle was the head coach, Don Hagan and Frank Screen was assistant coaches, and we had numerous volunteers.
Is there any objection to hiring them as a unit?
No, I do.
Okay, we will go individually. We'll start with the head coach.
Move to rehire Nolan Boyle as head track coach for the high school.
Been moved and seconded to hire Nolan Boyle as the head track coach. Is there any discussion? Discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next would be assistant coach Don Hagan.
Move for you hire Don Hagan as assistant high school track coach.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to hire Don Hagan as the assistant track coach. Is there any discussion? Discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Next would be Frank Spring as an assistant.
Move for you hire Frank Spring as assistant high school track coach.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to hire Frank Spring as the assistant track coach. Is there any discussion? Discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Next would be golf.
George Mann and Tristan Clark were our coaches.
Is there any,
I have a quick question, Bob. You're 100% sure both those gentlemen?
I'm gonna say 100% the head coach wants to coach, but we may get a resignation later for the assistant. But he, right now says, he said he'd like to be. But he's got some things I think Tristan's getting a little tired from coaching 3 sports. And I think Spring he might be after basketball, he might just. So,
The last time I talked to George, he said he was a definite no.
I thought you'd be sitting out too.
now I talked to him at the rest divisional volleyball.
Right. So the question is, should we even be looking at hiring now, or should we be waiting a slightly closer to spring? I mean, we're in November, wait.
We got, but I mean, I think if we could just get George hired, and then if we have to, we'll see how many we got for golf, and then we go.
He was there, Frank.
we usually hire these coaches quite a bit ahead of the season so that they're when they're open.
So he was at the parent.
Not, because that was winter. He won't have, it'll be spring. I spoke to George in Mission, St. Ignatius. And I just asked him, because I've been talking to him, if he wasn't gonna coach, I wanted to get a resignation letter from him. And he told me at the meeting that he would, or at the volleyball game, that he would take them. And I was glad, I mean, me too, yeah, well, we get him to coach, so anyway, yeah.
Cool. Is there any objection to hiring the golf coaches together? Is there a motion?
Who's to hire George and this part of coaches?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to hire George Mann and Tristan Clark as golf coaches. Is there any discussion?
I just wanted the board to know that there were some very possible variables, so that I thought coaching. So I asked.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign, motion carries. Next, the facilities committee will give a report, and that is Rex.
Bart was supposed to, Bart. He's hunting, so, Bart and I met with Eric. Friday ago, I think it was, out for what, 3 hours per day? Yeah. Looking, Eric took us for tours of all the buildings, kind of showing us some of the stuff that's wrong with the buildings. Ideas that Brad will talk about here in a minute. But there's definitely some work we gotta do, some things we gotta figure out, discuss, decide. One of the main topics we discussed was bringing Brad's group A design on. Bart and I both, Bart was a no at first, and I had it on, and then once we got into it, saw the depth that we're gonna need. I mean, we don't know anything about the building, so we need to hire somebody to come in and actually tell us, yes, this is what he's done, this is what those recommendations, so we both felt just the money would be well spent working with Brad, and he told us, he gave us a hell of a discount, which is a good thing. So there's gonna be a lot of decisions to be made going forward, and as we get going forward, Eric and I discussed that we'll be bringing more community members in as we get going forward, and the other thing we discussed was hiring A&D design. If we do go to public meetings, people who will look at us and say, what's wrong, building's wrong, and so having them in a public meeting to explain the public what needs to be done is way better than us sitting there trying to explain it. We're not gonna get done. It just us. That is why we're recommending hiring and not speaks.
That's a motion.
I know, well, I mean, ultimately, it's gonna be, eventually.
And then the other message about the confidence, because their track record in this state. Working it all in the schools and then developing a level of trust and community when we bring together these community meetings to discuss what are our true needs. And I think that what Rick is also saying about, we want to differentiate between wants and what our needs are. We're pretty good at that. But the community wants to know about our needs.
We had a long discussion with Tara about how to fund it. She can probably send it on to you guys, you can do it, so. But that was our other issue, we don't have the money to do it. We can figure out how we do that, so. That's the question Bob's got, is how we pay for it. Tara, yeah, Tara.
Well, ultimately, the discussion was, we're at a point where you don't have another choice. You have to do something. And in this case, we would have to use our flex fund to pay for it, which that's what it's there for. So,
And there's not there to do it.
Yeah.
And it's my understanding, talking to Brad that day on the phone, that it's not gonna be pay it all up front. If we pay as you go, it's not like we're gonna come up with the whole $45,000 up front. As they do work, then
What is our time frame still looking like as far as, once we kind of delve into this on when it comes to.
yeah, we wanna, we're gonna do a bond issue, we wanna do it April 10th.
Right.
And be a push. Public meeting from Craig.
Well, I think that's a conversation that was probably on yours, like the resolution for bond is you really have two pathways. So first is you can run a bond on the normal school elections, which is like May 5th, that first Tuesday in May. You have to notice that this was just adopted in October. You have to make that notice on December 11th, I think is the deadline. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to have every detail figured out. You can also run a special election. That only needs to be 70 days prior. So I talked to your county elections officer, Jody Walker, and she basically said she'll run the bond for the district at any time. It is an additional, I mean, it's a cost, right? It's gonna cost the district money to run that bond. Versus if you ran it, because you're probably gonna have to run one on the 5th of May anyways for your some board of trustees that might be running or positions. So you can pair those together and it's one cost, or you can separate them and have two costs. But that's really the. So the difference there is, if you were to in December, for as an example, run a special election, you could run that by the end of February or early March. If you decide to go to the May election, you still need to decide in December. So that said, I think you're in a due diligence period right now as a board. You need to be thinking about that. And then, what I called it to Eric is guerrilla math, started to put just some guerrilla math together of what does the scale of this project look like. But beyond that, there's a legal component to the bond election that we need to go through with Dorsey. Bank generally does all of the bonds across the state, as well as TA Davidson, doing that homeowner and tax impact that you really should know that before you to go out for a bond election, so that what a homeowner who owns a $300,000 home, what that tax impact that needs to be included in the bond resolution. So I think we can make a special election or a May election. We just need to get going, and I think that's where we need input as we were working with you to say things like how big of a, if you're, we obviously need to do work to this building, or those things, but beyond that, I think there was some desire to say, we need to build a new kitchen, we need a new probably cafeteria. Well, that depends on, or that the size and scale of that depends on how many kids do you want to sit in that cafeteria at one time, and square footage is going to be the biggest driver cost. So there's ways we can find, say, $300,000. Let's do that due diligence to make sure we're saying.
Sorry, was that helpful?
Yes.
That was still in our report.
Sorry, I skipped ahead a little.
Here, go on. I would move that we hire Andy Design. Continue on, work on getting us the reports, what we need to know.
Awesome. Then moved in second to hire A&E Design. Help with buildings.
And what's this is no. Sorry, go ahead. I know you had a question.
The bond, I think, everyone.
It's elementary.
It does not affect you guys in Temple, it's just elementary districts. So the racetrack and the Deer Lodge area doesn't go out to Garrison or.
I have a question for buildings. For one building, say another district building, then does it involve?
No, so all that you do there is when we do our accounting. Like, so let's say your principal, she has 10% junior high, the rest high school. So 10% of her salary would be accounted for that from out of elementary. The rest will come out. So it's just a matter of when you do your budget, splitting out the different areas. It's the same as what we do with the business office right now, or with Chris. We're all split percentage wise between the two buckets.
So then would we be splitting?
Every,
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
you would take that percentage,
really.
A&D designer is not gonna be doing anything up at the high school then?
No.
No.
only
Over
district
the-
out
this-
Okay, but that's a 48.
Four buildings here.
For the boilers, none of that, okay.
This are four buildings.
Yes.
So your plan involves redesigning the building so that the pool can shut in?
Well, A, I don't have a plan yet.
Okay.
But B, that is a major part of this is getting them pulled up. So that is the one.
In your experience, I don't have any experience about this, adding on something like the elementary cafeteria, would that put a damper on pool?
To be honest, it's a little bit specific to each community. Like every community has different priorities and we need to, I think this is part of that due diligence. Is I think when we work with Dorsey and Whitney, if they'll do that bond, which that's the first question we're gonna ask is. As a board, I think you need to be ready, and I think that's why we need to have these conversations is. Should this bond be a two-part question, where if one passes and one doesn't, you can still go forward with it, or should these be linked together? And I think we had that discussion in the last meeting, but I think that is definitely something to be on, right? And considered.
And then, I'm not sure if you know this either, if we decide and the plans start going and the bond goes out in May, what would be your estimated time? Because I'm assuming you're just the design, not the actual.
Yes, we're not the contractor.
So that, you would get the money in May to start the design?
Yep.
Take about a year?
Design for this, I think wouldn't take a year. I think it's probably could be a 46-month process. It's probably not a longer than, depending on the scale of the construction, we can see anywhere from 9 to 16 months, depending on what it is. I mean, with what you're doing, they may say, let's come in here right away, get the pool up and running, as an example. And that they might phase out and get done, and then definitely thinking about your school schedules and working around that and saying, okay, when do schools get out so that you're not dealing with and then moving kids around, you're not moving them around mid-year if you're having something. So those are things we worked through once that's all worked out with the contractor and owner.
Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, we will vote on hiring A&E Design for the buildings. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. Okay. Next would be the resolution around the bond.
We'll speak to that.
Well, yeah, so I guess what I was kind of following up with what we said is, I don't I wouldn't recommend we put a resolution out tonight. I think there's too much other work that needs to be done and the due diligence. With DA Davidson, of course, Whitney of the legal standpoint, financial standpoint, I think we need a minimum of 30 days until we come back in December. To work with some of your group and just say, you know, what is the right size if we do a kitchen, and making sure that your priorities and everything are caught. The last thing I want to say is this is where we want to put. You know, an addition on something or demo something, and we're running into a gas line, and that's another, you know, 400,000. We don't anticipate. We want to make sure that we've got all of that stuff understood before we just go out there and say. That gorilla math was me, and some of the estimates I did was me just kind of taking boilerplate information of what I do with a lot of schools and say, this is roughly where it is, but we need to do our due diligence. We need to give you the right information. Worst thing we can do is pass a bond, and we get into it and we're like, dang it, missed something, we needed extra money, or we have to cut something. And we just pride ourselves on not ever having to do that, and that's not what we want to do. At the end of the day, we'd rather have you say, we've got a little bit of a surplus here, let's make sure we can do a little bit more with this, so that we can serve.
You said that there was a December 11th deadline.
That is the deadline. If you want to run that,
That's
that is if you want to run a bond. On the May 5th, that is the deadline for that. So, or not for that regular election, that regular school election on May 5th, the December 11th. That said, you could do this on January 12th and probably still do an April election, whatever 70 days is, do a special election. So that could give you a little bit more time or runway, and I think that's part of that due diligence too, say, when do we want to run this election? If you don't want to run it with the regular election, when would you want to do it? Do you want to get ahead of it? Do you want to do it after? And then we just back up from there and say, okay, then we need to get back to you, up to the board on whatever that 70-day period is.
Do you think that pushing to December 11th is too soon? Honestly,
It's quick, but I think if you've got a committee that we could work with over the next 30 days, where we could meet probably once a week to just say, hey, let's go do these things, let's talk about these things. That could help inform you. I think that would be valuable. I think we could do it. It would probably set the record for the fastest group I've ever worked with, but I'm not scared by that by any means. I think we've got a good head start. The difference is generally when I'm doing this, we're often talking about 30, 40, 50 million dollar bonds. In this case, we're not talking about that, in my opinion. You guys might change my mind on that. I mean, your capacity is 25 million, but I don't know that we're going to that scale. And I think there's a lot more variables at that bigger scale. We did just pass, Shields Valley, small little conservative, passed a $10 million bond on November last week, or it was the last week, I think. So we're riding that same wheelhouse and a very similar kind of, I think, concern that we need to talk about. And how do we promote that bond too? Because there's the part of deciding what the bond is and the amount. The second part is probably the biggest part. It's educating your community on why it is, how much it costs, what are you doing with the students at the time. Now, if you do any sort of demolition or do anything, where are those things? But we gotta get all of that solid, because the community will point out the holes in the plan will have them solved. They will be the first ones that'll find those things.
well, it's better they find them early anyways, so.
But we want to make sure that we find them quick too, that we don't, as few as we can possibly have.
So if we did a special election, then, could that move the real date significantly forward?
I don't think it's gonna move it significantly, because even if you elected to do one. On December 11th, I think the end of February, as we did this with Belgrade, they did a special election in February, which is, I think, around the same time frame we could be talking about if that was December. You'd move it a little bit, we could definitely fast track certain things, like, definitely getting air handlers fixed, getting, different, plumbing issues in this, getting the pool fixed could probably move up. Big construction, if we do anything with, kitchen, cafeteria, might still be very similar. Our goal is always to open those in the summer before a fall school start, if that's best we can, generally. That just gives your kitchen, your staff, your maintenance time to really understand and use the building before you have a bunch of kids walking the door and staff.
But if we did a May meeting, that would shove us,
Back too far.
well,
Yeah.
I'm just,
Yeah.
I think that shut you through the first window.
Yeah.
But maybe,
I think either one of them, I think we could be ready by the following fall would be a goal. I think the May would be a little later. The sooner the better, to start. I don't want to speak to contractors because I'm not a contractor.
Very good response, Deer Lodge's election in November, good turnout. That would be my concern, is if you run it early and, you know, people just lose it in the mail and, you know.
I don't know that you wanna run it in November, that's what happened to Belgrade.
Yeah.
They ran a general election that failed.
Belgrade's tough right now. Been a part of two of those, like, wow, first one, we passed in that, what's it called, in that February timeframe, and then they ran that $49 million bond, and then I wasn't part of the last one that just failed for $6 million, but they've got a lot of distrust with their district right now, and that's hard.
Problem we got is we also have to pay the building reserve fund this year too. So we're better off with the two building ones standing alone or the rest of it, or.
So this is gonna get really weird, or not really, this is what we often see in the communities, is people don't know the difference between a bond and a levy. And they're like, well, I just gave you money, why are you asking for more money? This happens everywhere we go, and sometimes I feel like I'm gonna build educate every community member, and it's almost impossible. But the difference of a bond and a levy is very different, and people don't understand that there's limitations on how you can spend that money. I know you're over here shutting your head like this is your language, but there's regulations about how they can spend that money as a district. You all know that, and just the general public is naive to that a lot of times. Not everyone, but some, a lot of people. Yep.
I'm talking from ignorance. So, if we're trying to get voter turnout, my experience has been, if you've got a special election, the turnout is not going to be as comprehensive as if you said you could piggyback, there's maybe an election in May, and you could piggyback it with that, maybe there would be more response. If we're trying to get as much community response, participation.
I've seen it both ways. I mean, Belgrade was the one where when they disconnected them, they had success. When they put them together, they've actually struggled to get that passed. And for whatever reason, I can't decide and tell how.
With ours, they're all gonna be mail. It's not like you're relying on people to go down and vote in the polling booth, they'll all be in. All the school elections are always at banks.
Okay.
So everybody that's a voter, the ballot is gonna get turned out.
So our next regular meeting's for night. And you're seeing that,
You would probably want to adopt that election that night if you were doing the May election. You wouldn't necessarily have to do this if you did a special election. You could punt a little bit, but my recommendation is I would love to have at that meeting on the 9th, have Bridget Ekstrom from DA Davidson here, and at least if you want to go, just because what she could say is, you know, if we're running a $7 million bond, as an example, what she's gonna do is show you with some charts that show you, you know, here's the tax impact for your things, and go through that, and then walk you through what it means to run a 20-year, 20-year, or 25-year, or a 30-year, that's the term on your bond, and what those impacts are for you. And obviously, the longer the term, the more interest you pay as a community. And so those are the things that she wants you all to be really well prepared in understanding that.
Guessing in December, we're gonna have to decide which way to go, one way or the other, so.
Yeah, probably before then. Like-
Yeah, in December, we'll have to do our regular election resolution anyway. So it'll be a matter of you guys deciding if you want to do. This one or this motion.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest question for you right now. Do you want to do a special election or the regular?
And we could do the regular election, but we could still run this as a special election and 7 days later instead of May.
So you could do those both on the 9th, and then just 10 days
Yeah,
later.
still separate.
We don't have all the numbers with the. Push us out to January, but we could still do a special.
And you still get ahead of that May election.
If you put the placeholder in, you could still have it in May. If you don't have all of the exact numbers, as long as you have that resolution that you're going to have that election, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so then if you, are you talking about for the May election? You did
Yeah,
that.
so
Piggyback
you
that.
decided to do the May election.
Yeah.
And you don't have, your math is still
So this is
a
what
long
Laurel's
ways
doing.
away. We're just putting a placeholder with the fine tuned number.
So Laurel's gonna do that, they're gonna piggyback, and then they're asking for probably $30-40 million for their high school, so it's a bigger thing, but they're probably gonna, they will definitely ask, or put out on December 11th. This is our, and this is our resolution to call election, but then by the middle or end of February, then they will have the amendment to the resolution of here's the bond amount, here's taxpayer impact, here's the final verbiage of the bond language at that, so. You do have that ability to do the same thing so that, because that gives them time, and us working with them time to, you know. Finesse everything, and then from that February to May is that all that pre-bond outreach.
If you do that, you switch back and go for a special election, because once you do the resolution.
I think you
you're
have to
stuck with
call
it.
that you're either doing the special election or regular.
Well, that makes sense.
We have to make that decision.
It's a little tricky, yeah, this new. You might be along with Laurel, probably the first districts to do this new cycle of elections, and so kind of the guinea pig. It's a little different. It was nice when it was just 70 days, always. What else can I answer?
Glad you're here.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I love this group.
Yeah, you're gonna get started quickly.
Yeah.
So you're gonna work with our committee and.
Yeah, and I'll definitely bring a couple other people out.
Any other questions?
Or,
Do you have any data?
we're on the phone with some frequency, so. Brad's here, and Brad had a special dispensation from the company because they did a merge today with another one, and
So
so
we merged companies about a month ago, but I just ran it all day. Along with 3 of my other partners, on just all day, 112 person staff meeting, it's chaos. Here.
yeah, we'll figure it out.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you guys.
Thanks, Brett. Principals report, Lewis, Strong, and so first. This stuff.
Nice to have you moving down there.
You're good, right?
Doesn't matter.
Okay, yeah, you're fine.
So junior Highland, we are. Working through our first window of mass testing. In 3rd through 8th grade. We did, in the middle of October, we got the results, for the aggregated results for each student and for the district, well, not for the district in October, but for each student in October that weighed out with our parent-teacher conferences. And then our aggregated results came out a little bit, like 2 weeks later, and then last week, the state results came out. So I have for you the kind of each cohort, how they did in each subject area, and then let me just take them down and pass them around. And then how they did with the state. So each of them is kind of divided by line, so you can see each group going through there. Some of the things that the OPI is asking us to bear in mind, and as we're looking at this first round, is that this is the first round of this type of testing with aggregated scores across the state. I think our students scored, generally, we kind of followed the state in many ways, just kind of looking where those midlines are for proficiency. Each class is a little different. And then I think we also had, in our case, an additional kind of layer where we had new math curriculum as well. So we were kind of at the same time trying to figure out how our curriculum fits with the testing program, and work through that a little bit. So I'll give you a second to get any questions.
Quick glance, what What are we wanting, Shelley? What's the right?
We want a lot of green and blue. We want a lot of green and blue.
Great.
So our eighth graders are doing well in English,
Yes.
language arts,
Mhm.
but math, we're not quite,
We're not quite,
we're pushed the
yeah,
other end.
yeah.
And the opposite could be said to be true for seventh graders, they're doing better in the math side,
Correct,
the ELA.
correct. So where you see more green and blue in that first row of data for each group, that's what our students are doing. We want to see green and blue there. And then the second row is how Montana as a whole is doing. I don't know if some of the norming is gonna change. This was the first year that they had data from across the state to be able to set kind of where their cutoffs are. But this is this is really kind of just baseline data. Where to go from here. I don't think that it's super prescriptive or diagnostic at this point, because we don't have a lot to compare it to. And data helps when we compare something.
This is our second year, we're going into our second.
We're going into our second year with the math curriculum and into our second year with this master testing. So we're just about done with our first window of math. I did send out last week a message to parents so that they can connect with their students' test split, which is like the test by test scores that are coming in for third through eighth grade parents.
What do you think of it? I mean, honestly, you've been doing this here, I mean, you guys can tell us on
I
it.
have a lot of thoughts. I think it's a lot of testing. Yes, we're not doing like a week of math testing and a week of English language arts testing at the end of the year. We constantly have groups that are testing, you know, like in the junior high. And I'm sure you guys probably say also, we're testing a lot. All the time. And while it's nice to get those scores back as we're going, we don't have time to go back and do a whole lot of reteaching because we gotta get ready for the next test, which is coming in, 2.5 seconds. It feels like, and so, does it feel like a merry-go-round of testing sometimes? I sense.
And if you don't have the time to go back and reteach what needs to be taught, then what is the point?
Yeah.
Maybe I think
$1 million question.
you're testing how much actual.
Instruction.
Instruction, right, got it.
missing.
Yeah, I
On the other hand, with the smarter mouth test and that, which is performance CFTs, we were testing when there was still 2 months left of school on material that you didn't get to, so. Right.
And stuff that was 5 months old.
Yeah,
this,
so it's a,
one advantage we have now is we can kind of lay out, at least for math, we can lay out, okay, if we're gonna test on this concept. State says we're gonna test on this concept, then we know we have to cover that concept before that happens. So that I think is at least nice because we can kind of plan that out and focus on that. Where we're having trouble is figuring out how to go back.
my biggest thing is, I teach nerds. And this is the first year that they start these tests. They have to learn typing, chow, all of that they have been introduced to. By, when do we start at the end of October? So they're supposed to know their keyboarding. And the very first test is multiplication and division. Third graders are still trying to figure out addition and subtraction. So it's very difficult and frustrating as teachers, that you're planning this down their throats more or less, and we just have to continue to go on. So I don't
So
know.
what, I mean,
What?
do you feel that if it's not effective, like,
We don't have a choice.
That's what I'm saying.
State says we have
This is
to.
what the state has like now.
Good thing is, man, you're now in third grade, it's so, you did great.
Well, hey. Names are on there.
Not much red on yours.
So, yeah, so it's
So is there any information that we can glean from
We-
the colors?
what we've got is like, here we've got like half of our students are proficient on these. We've got less than half proficient here,
Okay,
okay? So
so we
it's very-
don't
it's
even
very-
worry about the second set
I
of
just
lines?
put that in there to see
Yeah,
how we're
right.
doing compared to the state, because sometimes
But there's no, when you start looking at that, there's no comparison, cause one grade level is great, the next, you,
And even across the state, it varies widely.
yeah, so.
And
It's just like our kids at home. That's different.
Correct.
You go from one class of third graders to the all-stars this year, the next month, pick it up.
Right.
They're bunch of balls and whatnot. So it's like, we look at data, state requires you look at data. So sometimes that data is a punishment. But we're dealing with our kids that are.
Right, I mean, I don't wanna lose our children over testing either. The really true importance is creating good basis. Especially. Yeah, absolutely.
So I think maybe the data would be more meaningful when we have more years of it and we could say, okay, you know, Tammy's group from last year, they did great in third grade. They're continuing to, progress at their grade level. Or do we have a group that's really falling behind? And I think that's when we can look at, you know, when we're comparing apples to apples, these apples, we got these apples, we can do something with these apples. Once we have some data where we can say, okay, these apples need help in this area, and maybe zero some of those things in. But right now, this is just baseline. We're all getting used to the test, we're all getting used to the math curriculum. Right now, we're getting used to the new English language arts curriculum. And so, you know, these first few years are gonna be a lot of baseline.
Has the state reached out to you as far as feedback on how it's going for the teachers?
Any opportunity that you have to give feedback, you're allowed. I'm just gonna say that. I've given a lot of feedback in the form of surveys, because I'm the test coordinator, you know, and they'll reach out to me and say, what are you seeing? And overwhelmed. I think even among our students, you know, when I asked our students, and you can just tell, you know, like the testing.
Well, what's the general testing session? Are we talking 10
They're like-
minutes? Are we talking a full class period?
It depends on you might have a student that gets it done in 10 minutes and you have a student who works for an hour, so.
Yeah.
One question.
Yeah.
How that goes.
Yeah, and there's a lot of it we can't control.
Yeah,
You know, with
yeah.
release.
Can't hover over the.
Can't hover.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can, but, so, yeah, you know, we can't like, we can say, you need to do your best and, make sure you're not going too fast. You know, those kinds of things, but then you have kids that ABC it all the way through. And there are factors in this that we can't control. You know, we can't control 8th grade itis. We can't control, you know, third graders, they're learning, a new building. They're learning how to computer and take these tests and things, and that's not easy for them as well. And so there are a lot of things that are not just math and English language arts that show up in this data. But it's not necessarily indicative entirely of what our students are doing.
3 years the state just said, well.
Those are some things.
That's possible.
Thank you. I just wanted to add, I've got a background in assessment, and when you guys were like, what are we looking at here? Everything you said, 100%, you got it, and you know, this is the background in testing too, but basically, if you were looking at this and comparing your school to the state, you guys were all red or yellow, you would be freaking out right now. And if you were all blue and green, you'd be like, woohoo, we're doing great. So looking at it like this just shows you, you're kind of right on par with what every school is dealing with right now in the state. So there's like nothing to worry about, you just kind of keep your own.
And as we get more information next year about this time, I'll give you more information. The other big thing that we have coming up is our parent advisory council is putting together a family trivia night. We sent out information via email to parents and families, and we also sent out information with report cards. It's going to be at the high school tomorrow at 5:30. Please come if you can, bring a team. There'll be prizes. The boosters are doing food for us, and I think it's going to be really a fun night for people just to be together and to enjoy time in our space and with each other and around some pretty fun questions coming up, I have to say. I was putting together the rounds of questions, and some of them were just making me giggle. So we've got questions for students of all ages. We tried to have questions that our littles could engage in and our bigs could engage in too. So
bring your family, bring an appetite, and bring a sense of adventure. Yes. Thank you.
I'll go next. We've got a copy of my report in your packet. Where our enrollment's at 162, holding steady. You can see the breakdown by grade there. Okay, good. I just have this broken down by our strategic plan goals. So for student success, all of our kids in grades 9 through 11 took the pre-ACT on October 21st. I know we're talking more about testing tonight, but that's a new thing last year with our kids, and we've already seen an increase in our ACT scores just prepping kids by taking the pre-ACT. So all of our grades met the English goal, the nationwide norm set for each grade. So that's fantastic, and our sophomores met the reading goals. Good. Our goal was to not have any athletes ineligible this year. That was part of our student success, but we have already unfortunately had some athletes are ineligible. So we will continue to work towards having fewer athletes eligible. Alignment of resources are PLCs are working really hard on pacing guides, which we as an admin team believe the state is going to require of us pretty soon. So we're getting those done. And then Shelley talked about our trivia night. We have our next PAC meeting on November 20th, and we have 6 new members that have applied to be on the PAC, and so they'll be joining us. That's all I got. That's good. Yeah. Questions?
What's this district discipline matrix?
So we've decided that we're going to work on having common language K through 12 on this one, because each of our sections does it very differently. And so we're starting with a path that kind of support it. Very preliminary stages. Okay.
At K through 5 land, we've been pretty busy the last couple of weeks. We had Red Ribbon Week. I was gonna do that. And in conjunction with getting ready, the culmination was Halloween and the Halloween parade. We had to do a modified route because our intersection was not ready. We were communicating with the contracting group and they were giving us good feedback, but then finally Wednesday, they said, we're not gonna make it. So we staggered everything down 2 blocks. It went well. We had plenty of people show up. We skipped going in front of several watering holes in the new route, so that was awesome. Less guarding our kids walking by, but it was good. Everybody had a great time. It was fantastic. Last week, we had parent teacher conferences. I think for the most part, we had pretty solid turnout. There's always more. You can always want more turnout. We did have a number that had 100%, but there are always some parents that you like to have, but I think in general, it went very well. I had some good dialogue with parents. So it ended up very well. We're in the process of making sure that from our crisis response team, our safety team, as well as for the teachers that do outside recess, that's a requirement for first aid. Are those that are on our safety team committee are, if we're not current on first aid and CPR, Shane Olson is working on getting us signed up. There's some online stuff that we do for training, and then he's doing some in-person. He started this week doing some first aid training with teachers that just need it for their recesses. So he's getting that done this week, and then we'll go into the first aid CPR for the others that need it. So we're trying to get everything up to date on all of that. We talked about PLCs and we have early out next week. And I just want to say from the K-5 perspective, how much I appreciate the dialogue that is happening at grade level and in building levels, like for 3rd, 4th, and 5th. As again, we introduced new math curriculum last year. We tested as we went last year, and this year we're one more step ahead. But part of what's happening that I really appreciate is the teachers are working very hard at the commonality of language. I mean, there are certain skills that are being taught by the curriculum that are a certain way that don't necessarily fall in line with how they're being assessed on the MAST assessment. So they're having some really rich dialogue as far as what that looks like. And I think even as we get through this year and work our way into next year, I think if the assessment stays the same, I think we're gonna continue to see a lot more of the blue and green as that they build on that commonality of language. So I'm really, really pleased. We are in the same boat for English language arts. This year, we are implementing a brand new English language arts curriculum that we haven't used before. And so the same types of things are happening. So early outs now, they're looking at what the expectations are for the students in reading and comprehension and those language skills and stuff. So again, just big shout out to the teachers and the hard work that they're putting in to make sure that they're doing their due diligence with the curriculum that they have. So greatly appreciated. The last, I want to, two things. I want to give a big shout out to the volunteers. In the K-5, we have a tremendous number of members of the community. Some are here that come in on their own and do small group. We do a lot of small group instruction. It helps with the teachers to facilitate some skill development with students that they can't normally get to with their whole class period. And so we couldn't do it without the volunteers that we have. And it's just amazing to see the willingness of the people that come in and work with our kiddos on a regular basis. So kudos to you and the rest of the crew that come in, because you guys are fabulous and our kids benefit from it. So it's wonderful. The last thing is that we finally were able to bring back, we had a Veterans Day luncheon and celebration today. We had 12 veterans that we were able to serve. We opened up with the high school ensemble. They had I think probably their select choir, and they opened up with, they gave us two pieces of music that were phenomenal, and kudos to Karen Herron and those kiddos. We had a wonderful group of 5th grade students that were selected that provided, they served the veterans, provided them their lunch, their dessert, their beverages, and they were clearing their places. And again, shout out to 5th grade teachers and the 5th grade kiddos that got to experience service. And it's always good to, especially to serve those that have served for us. So I think it was a great welcome back, and it was a lot of fun to have them back in the building and be able to do that again for our community. And then we finished up with a selection from the junior high choir. So that was pretty awesome. And we had a lot of accolades and a lot of appreciative veterans. So it's a great afternoon.
Yeah, I'll tell a little what Rick was saying was that this was my first Shelley Bogus divided veterans lunch when she put on the ballot. But wonderful lunch for food. So we eat well here, and I'm trying to look on.
Body by hot lunch.
Anyways, I'll reach out tomorrow to Brad, because he has a schematic on what he thinks the most efficient committee looks like. But people should be on that committee, so we don't have too few and we don't have too many. And so not reinventing the wheel here, but I'll get that from him and we'll proceed with that. And I said it earlier, but I gotta say, considering what Brad did today, I think he demonstrated this community and this board the commitment, the level that AD brings to the table with every school that they serve, because that man put on a lot of hours a day, a lot of miles, and he's still traveling home that. I think we'll work well with them. Chris mentioned it a little bit, but I'll speak a little bit more about, because I always like to talk about the heating here because it's a beast that's constantly chasing. But I appreciate that Puccinelli and Chris have really just made this building their own and our heating system their own. And we put a lot of money into it with another vendor. A lot of repairs have been made, but now just continue to have to do, some of it's nickel and dime and some of it's more like silver dollar and beyond. But and that core that Chris spoke of probably won't be an expensive item, but we won't have heat in that gym. Don't worry. We've got through some volleyball and we've got boys junior high basketball going on, but we get a few more weeks into this this year, and the parents will come into the junior high basketball game. And so we keep trying and trying. The nice thing is, like, it was just yesterday. In the heat exchange system, that's, just a big box, if you will, pipes coming in and out of it. And, that's in across the terrace room in a big closeted area. And there's a low point drain on that. Getting all that junk drained out of that. We're working on another valve system. We've heated, so this is the first time we've had heat this year. And so it's just one thing, keep taking steps, but again, this beach was designed the last 50 years and we're kind of there. So what we're going to do our due diligence and keep things not frozen up, heated as best we can. And get through our winter sports, but we have, like I say, at every meeting, we have heating in here every day, all day. This building is much needed. And so, something that Brad and I had talked about before, if he didn't mention tonight, but we will talk more. And I know the community continued to ask some questions. What about grants? What about grants? What about grants? And it's a great question. But Brad's experience with grants are, so most grants include a little more than scratch the surface, and most time they don't pay until you're all done anyway. So anybody that's willing to chase grants, through those to them, because every little bit of helps in the pot, right? But that will not take care of our project. And I think we need to look at this whole project as that grant will not take care of this project all in all. Something you didn't mention, but we'll hear from Bridget J. Davis, might mention intertap loans, because she'll look at the difference, what's better for us and for our community. She'll explain the difference to those at that next meeting. So anyways, we have heat. And Chris has worked a lot of nights. Chris is solid. So he works a lot of nights at his own time, he's been with his family. In this building and the high school building, because that thing has perks as well. And it's a fairly modern system. But Chris is making it happen, so not very butter's bread, but I guess I will. I'm gonna start meeting with some teachers in their buildings, like right after school, because kind of at that point when we need to start having some vision, or what do we want to do? Kind of, we need to tighten our belts, and I've been at enough schools now to recognize good teachers and good teaching when I see it, and I just would shut my mouth and not say anything about our teachers, but they are good teachers. We people don't. I'm the new guy in town, but we have excellent teachers here. So, but I want to get their opinions about how do we tighten our belts here? How can we better live with our opinions? And because they'll have vision for that. So that will all help develop our long-range plan. By this spring, we need to have a plan for how next school year looks like at the start. Not going to do that without some teacher open. So, and speaking of which, at Halloween, turns out I have a twin brother. Brian Hanson, he's my slightly younger twin brother. And so, knowing that the bar is high in this community for teaching, I got invited to come and teach a little pitch class from the science. I'd make sure my steel was sharp, so I'd measure up. But I didn't get to be part of Brown, and I needed to be sixth grade science teacher at that class. So I'm thinking if I come back and we have to go. The senior student council asked me recently if they could paint their individual apartment spots, and I like that. I think it reeks of school spirit that says I love school, I love my school experience, and anything that I can do, encourage that. Ms. Crawford's on board with it too. I said, ladies, because it was so simple, I was group that closely done. I said, winter's coming next week, and you have designated spots, so we're not going to bicker over all that. So it's funny to see high school kids taking the leadership role and make sure that if somebody doesn't have money to paint, that they're going to make sure that. And if we can make sure that we have our spots picked before we start painting, so we're both living on all that. So kind of taking a very adult-like position on this, but I think hopefully before the snow flies, it gets real cold, and have their spots painted. And just when you drive by, or you go to games, our kids love their school, and I like that message. So kudos to them. And then lastly, we've been having a a safety team meeting. Our committee is a very large committee, and a lot of input, a lot of interest in that. And, so we're gonna develop some common ground at our next PLC. I'm an advocate for a training called Alice Training, it's an acronym. But, there's a deputy, Logan Livingston, he's a deputy up in the Great Falls area, and he was an Alice trainer. So our next PLC, he's gonna be online with us right here in this room with that committee. He's gonna explain to that committee what Alice training is. And our sheriff here in town will be there as well. And at that point, we're going to be invited to send an ambassador to go up there to be the trained to be an Alice trainer. We're going to learn what Alice is and how to protect our kids in certain situations, how to react to certain situations. There's a lot of old thinking that is not good. A little bit about hiding. People go down and go away. It's not good to training. So we're going to ramp up our thing a little bit here and we have representatives from all buildings, all the principals involved with that. So that's going to be the next secretary.
Falls has been put together.
When I was at the middle school, we brought in the true Alice training. We all got trained up on that, we all know what to do in certain situations. So we'll have a common ground, and then we'll still have our own local, but at least we'll have something that we can regulate around and keep on the program from. So that's where we're at.
Karen, are you ready?
Yeah. I'm going to, in your binders, every month, I'm gonna start including the student enrollment report. Just because our student counts are directly connected to our finances, so it's just informational for you guys to look at every month. What I will say is I did have Autumn from OPI School Finance call me last month. And she goes, just want to double check that your student count numbers are right, because they're so low. And I said yes, and then she said to me that she made several phone calls that day to other districts, same question. Because it is a Montana statewide problem. It's not just here. We're not the only ones having issues with enrollment across the state. So just an FYI for you guys. Your budget pages are updated. The only thing that's not updated in your binder is you don't have the updated spreadsheets with cash balances, and that's because I have not seen the trial balance treasure. But everything else is updated in here. The only other thing I wanted to say, and again, not sound like a broken record, but piggybacking on the heat in here. You guys look at your claims detail that Leanne printed out to you on the second page. We'll see this month's core control bill and how large it is. And that's only a third of what we've paid the last 2 to 3 months. So we're throwing money at this building. And yesterday, Leanne and I were 5 minutes away from saying, gotta put us somewhere else. It's been freezing. We're throwing money at it and he's doing what he can, but it's not going to fix the situation.
Our temperature's supposed to drop on Friday.
Winter on Monday, Tuesday. Come back on.
And we,
Be so, what happens when this is cold? What do you know?
Well, we're hoping that it's not too cold. We're hoping that we can get this. We're trying to fix it in-house so we can better afford to fix it because, like Tara said, we throw a lot of money. And it's one nice thing is if you walk up and down the hall, you don't get a free shower. That was a very expensive fix because it was 1970s components. It had to be wrestled up and all replaced. An old pipe that is frozen, but it's not raining anymore. The only place we still have a leak in the hall is the one spot that was leaking before we started all that. And it exposed itself. So, but, and if you want to look at what it looks like, If you walk down that hall, there's a, end of the hall, there's a bucket there. Look up above that and look at that red union that ice coming together. It's red from the pipe. It's like the rest of the color. And then this nasty brown rust, it's just corrosion. Which it come apart, that's, we're hoping that might hold on, we don't have to low point rain on that again. But,
But are you being serious about having to have a different spot somewhere?
If we had to move in one of the other buildings, we could. There's space for us.
there's been 55 degrees in this complex most days. Get that up to about 60 on a good day. This is the first time this month I didn't have a gas on it. But because what we got done with that one air handler yesterday, and this pneumatic system, we're just kind of overriding that, like getting beat over it. But it's, I mean, Chris has two wives right now. One at home and one of the twin sisters here, so this, yeah. We have Lazarus and Nebuchadnezzar down there. All right, in the basement, and they're angry. Okay. But we keep moving along, that's always different hours. Fix this and fix that, we have a lot of new parts on old stuff. They're also, Chris has been to Wonder School, it's amazing what Chris has learned, accepted as a responsibility along with teaching Ellen, fixing these little things, taking that out, cleaning that, oiling this, and it look a little bit like Willy Wonka chocolate factory down there. But if we can keep it limping along and not have to actually say right, because College Hill is not very good alternative. And, but.
I guess my other big point too is this bond is gonna be really important, but we're gonna need all hands on deck, everyone getting the information out because we're not gonna have multiple tries at it. I mean, yeah, I have the money to pay for this time. I'm not gonna have the money to pay for it once. So it's really important that we do this right.
And Mr. Dahl is integrated that necessity into his system. What he'll help us with.
Yeah, so then we call it a public meeting. We're trying to get as much community members as we can. So if everybody needs to weigh in on this, they need to be informed of the board.
And I applaud Karen's remark in that it's not just asking people to come into our house, we have to go into their house. Because this is important. We have a legacy in Deer Lodge of more than 100 years. And we're gonna continue, the color report. I'm glad that we're doing that. I mean, we're but just like you say, we keep fixing here and fixing there. And I think that's what that's what our public school is doing. It's keeping up. Oh, thank you.
Elsewhere. Friends committee. I'm gonna take that and.
Tell me about the Minecraft subscription.
So. That
Every school does it.
That was for the high school and we used it last year. We're not utilizing it this year, but we're not allowed to cancel the subscription this year. We have to pay for it this year. And
Is it on a two-year rotation?
huh?
Is it a two-year contract and that's the reason why we chose?
I can't remember exactly what they told me. Why I couldn't cancel it. Like I. That's.
We have a motion? We have a motion, one second, add some discussion, is there any more discussion? Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye, all those opposed, same sign, motion carried. Is there any future agenda item?
Placeholder resolution.
The final reading on 310.
Third reading.
We will go one reading.
Like the one reading.
Did you say that the Alice and we put that on it? Not yet. We've been according.
No, it's probably. That's what we do.
Anybody have? We don't have your, well, yeah, well, that's probably a standing agenda item. Okay. During the meeting.
I think.